Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, I just wanted to go ahead and answer a question from a viewer. The viewer is James Barron 1202, and he asks, here's another forward-facing sonar question. About how many bass on percentage would you estimate that move towards your bait without committing to it? This is a great question. I really do think that everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different on this, but in my experience, I would say that at least 50 to 60% of bass aren't going to commit, and that's like an average. So like you could go on a lake on a certain day and almost every bass commits, or you could have a day where just nothing is committing. And one of my good buddies, Joey Nania, he's one of the best at forward facing sonar in my book. He's one of the naturals of fishing, especially the Ned Meeky or Demiki, whatever you want to call it, mid strolling. And I've heard him say many times where he's had days where they just, as soon as that thing gets anywhere near him, or as soon as it hits the surface of the water, they're on it. And he's also had a lot of days where the fish are just in a funk. They're just in a weird mood. And that's the thing about forward-facing sonar. Just like everything else, the fish are going to have different moods depending on the day and the conditions. So it's not like I can sit here and say that 50 to 60% of the time they're going to avoid the bait, and then that 40% or 50% they're going to commit to it. But that's kind of my experience, is that the overall average is, if I was to average it out between the days where nothing commits and the days where everything seems to commit, it would have to be somewhere in the 50 to 60% range personally. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to note about forward-facing sonar is that we're still using a lot of different techniques. So it's still important to remember that you have to use a wide variety of different types of tackle and techniques to approach these fish on different days. So I think it's really important to have probably 4 or 5 different techniques that you're confident in with forward-facing sonar. A jerkbait is definitely one. Of course, fishing a Demiki or Ned Meeky or mid-strolling rig, some type of minnow soft plastic with a jig head, like, the jerk shads from Z-Man. Joey fishes the jerk shads with the finesse-sized jig head, and that's what I like to fish too. And then you have things like fishing a jig. Tyler Williams is a great example of somebody that really just leans on a jig pretty hard to catch those fish on forward-facing sonar. I think that's kind of unique, but fish have been biting jigs forever everywhere else, so why not on forward-facing sonar? And then also like things like Nico rigs, and what else? Man, those are in a drop shot, all those baits right there. Those are kind of standards, but I think the biggest key is to find a handful of different techniques that you can rotate between to turn those fish that are not committing into fish that are committing. So I think we are gonna see a lot of situations like with the Alabama rig where we just get so hung up on throwing like the Demiki or the mid-strolling techniques, and we assume that if those fish aren't going to bite that, they're just not going to bite. But just like any other situation, a small change, a small adjustment in technique can really make a difference. So that I know that's going beyond the question. The main question was how many fish tend to not commit to your bait, to react to it but not commit. But I really do think that you can change things in your favor based on kind of tweaking things and having several different presentations to lean on. So regardless of how you like forward-facing sonar, whether you're a fan of it or you absolutely hate it, if you're going to fish it, I definitely think it's going to pay off to rotate between different baits. But also, another note is don't get disheartened if you can't get those fish to commit. That was one of the things early on with forward-facing sonar when I started using it in 2019, is that those fish, some fish are just not going to commit to your bait. And there's so many different fish out there. It was amazing when I started fishing how many fish I saw on forward-facing sonar that either weren't bass or were bass that wouldn't commit. So you've got to learn how to not be disheartened and just target the fish that are willing to bite, because it's essentially the same thing we've been doing for forever in bass fishing. Is you just don't know about it. If a fish ignores your bait, you just usually don't know about it. But on forward-facing sonar, you have to get used to that rejection. So anyways, guys, that is my take on it. Thank you so much for the question, James Barron 1202. And if anybody else out there has any questions, drop a comment below and I'll try to do a video on that topic. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process.